has already begun to slow. 4 quiet places are waiting in a single line. Nothing will rush you from one to the next. The hours can blur without effort. This is one long stretch of calm. The spaces will change, but the pace will not. And the night will keep carrying you forward. The turbines have been turning slowly for hours. Red lights blink at steady intervals. The fields stretch flat in every direction. Nothing here is in a hurry. The air does not feel restless. It moves with quiet intention. The words can remain distant, like blades crossing the sky above you. Tall towers stand spaced across the plain. Their bases disappear into dark grass. No vehicle approaches along the service road. The land feels open, undisturbed. Each blade completes its rotation, not fast, not slow, just steady. The motion does not demand attention. It simply continues. A low mechanical hum travels across the field. Not loud, not sharp. It blends into the wind, then disappears again. Time begins to loosen beneath the towers. Minutes stop separating themselves. The turning replaces the clock. Nothing presses forward. Red signal lights blink in soft sequence. One fades, another appears, then another. The pattern feels predictable, reassuring. The ground between turbines remains still. Grass bends slightly, then settles. No footsteps cross the soil. A narrow gravel path runs toward the nearest tower. White stones reflect faint light. No tire marks disturb them. The surface feels unused, complete as it is. The blades continue their slow arc, cutting air without sound, returning to where they began. Each circle feels identical to the last. Time spreads wider across the plain. Moments rest side by side. No direction forms. The pause feels sufficient. Above, the sky remains clear and deep. Stars stay fixed in their places. No cloud interrupts the view. The height feels vast, but calm. A faint shift of wind passes through the grass. Not enough to carry dust, not enough to cool the air. Then it fades. The turbines do not accelerate. They do not slow. They maintain their quiet rhythm, steady, balanced. No truck appears on the distant road. No light turns toward the field. No signal changes color. The boundary remains undisturbed. Time loosens further beneath the turning blades. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The night feels evenly spread across the land. Red lights continue their quiet blinking, one after another, never all at once. The pattern remains measured. The gravel path reflects faint light again, then fades back into shadow. Nothing moves along it. The surface remains untouched. The wind farm does not anticipate morning. It does not prepare to stop. It simply remains in motion, neutral, reliable. Each blade completes another circle. Air parts. Air closes. The rotation continues. Nothing begins. Nothing ends. The open plain holds its shape. The towers hold their height. The sky holds its stars. Each element aligned without effort. No signal announces a change. No sound sharpens. Nothing resolves. The field feels complete as it is. The turbines continue beneath the wide night plain. The red lights continue their steady rhythm. The wind continues to pass between blades. Everything remains balanced, quiet, and undisturbed through the long, slow hours before dawn. The field continues to rest beneath the turning blades. No light changes its rhythm. No tower shifts its place. The spacing remains exact. Each turbine completes another slow circle. Air parts gently, then closes again. The motion feels unbroken, unforced. Red lights blink along the horizon. One fades, another glows. Then darkness returns between them. The pattern stays measured. Time loosens further across the plain. Moments stop lining up. They settle evenly beneath the towers. No direction presses forward. Grass moves once in a low wave. Not enough to travel far. Not enough to gather speed. Then it settles again. The gravel path remains pale in the faint light. No footprint appears. No tire disturbs the stones. The surface feels complete. Above, the sky remains wide and deep. Stars hold their quiet positions. No cloud drifts through them. The height feels steady, contained by stillness. The turbines do not quicken. They do not slow. Their rhythm remains constant, balanced, reliable. A faint hum travels across the field. Not louder, not softer. It blends into the open air, then disappears from notice. Time spreads evenly once more. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The pause feels sufficient. The towers remain spaced across the land. The blades remain in motion. The red lights remain steady. Each element holding its place. No vehicle approaches along the distant road. No new beam crosses the field. Nothing signals change. The boundary remains firm. The wind farm does not anticipate morning. It does not prepare to rest. It simply continues. Neutral. Uninterrupted. Another rotation completes. Then another. Each circle identical to the last. Nothing begins. Nothing ends. The open plain holds its quiet shape. The towers hold their height. The sky holds its stars. Everything remains aligned, undisturbed and steady. as the long night continues beneath the turning blades. The plain remains open beneath the steady rotation. No tower leans, no light falters. The distance between them stays precise. Blades continue their quiet sweep, not cutting, not rushing, just turning through dark air. Each arc feels identical to the last. Red lights blink across the horizon again, a soft pulse, then absence, then another. The rhythm stays calm and measured. Time loosens further across the land. Moments do not advance. They settle gently under the towers. No sequence forms. The grass bends slightly in a passing breath of wind. Not enough to travel far, not enough to carry sound. Then it returns upright. The gravel path remains pale and empty. No shadow crosses it. No motion disturbs the stones. The surface feels undisturbed. Above, the sky holds its depth. Stars remain steady. Nothing shifts among them. The height feels wide, but contained by quiet. The turbines maintain their speed, neither faster nor slower. Their movement feels balanced, reliable, even. A low hum drifts across the open ground. It does not sharpen. It does not fade. It becomes part of the field, then disappears into stillness. Time spreads evenly once more. Minutes lose their weight. Presence replaces progression. The pause feels complete. The towers remain upright. The blades remain turning. The red lights remain blinking. Each element steady within its place. No vehicle approaches from the distant road. No new light enters the field. No signal changes. The boundary holds firm. Another slow rotation completes. Then another. The air opens and closes around the blades. Nothing resolves. Nothing begins. The wind farm continues beneath the wide night plain. The lights continue their quiet rhythm. The land continues to rest between towers. Everything remains aligned, balanced, and undisturbed as the long dark hours move quietly toward morning. The field remains open beneath the final quiet hours. No tower alters its height. No light loses its rhythm. The spacing across the plain stays exact. Blades complete another slow circle. Air parts gently, then closes without sound. The motion feels endless, yet unhurried. Red lights blink once more along the horizon, a soft pulse, then darkness between, then stillness again. The pattern remains calm and measured. Time no longer feels like progression. Moments rest quietly beneath the turbines. They do not lead anywhere. The pause feels sufficient. Grass moves in a faint breath of wind. Not enough to gather, not enough to travel far. Then it settles once more. The gravel path stays empty. The sky stays clear. The hum remains low and steady. Nothing presses the night forward. The turbines continue without effort, balanced against the dark sky, balanced against the land, steady, contained. The plane holds its quiet shape. The red lights hold their pulse. The blades hold their turning. Everything remains aligned, undisturbed and calm, as the final stretch of night lingers beneath the wide, open sky. The checkpoint remained lit long after traffic has disappeared. Concrete barriers stand in straight lines. Overhead lamps cast pale circles on the road. Nothing here prepares to wave a car through. The highway stretches silent in both directions. No headlights approach. The words can stay distant, like wind moving over painted lanes. Metal fencing runs parallel to the asphalt. Its shadow falls evenly across the ground. No gate shifts on its hinges. The boundary feels firm, unchallenged by the hour. White lines divide the roadway into quiet lanes. Arrows point forward. Stop markings remain clear. No tires cross them. No engine hums nearby. Time begins to loosen beneath the lamps. Minutes stop announcing themselves. The glow replaces the clock. Nothing presses forward. A small booth stands at the center of the lanes. Windows reflect only light. The door remains closed. Inside, a desk lamp glows steadily. No chair moves. The barrier arms rest in lowered position. Red stripes remain visible. No mechanism clicks. They hold their place without tension. Beyond the checkpoint, the highway disappears into darkness. Reflective markers blink faintly, then fade again. Distance feels contained, not endless. Air drifts slowly along the asphalt, not enough to cool the surface, not enough to lift dust. Then it settles again. Time spreads wider across the road. Moments rest beside one another. No sequence forms. The pause feels sufficient. Security cameras remain fixed above the lanes. Their lenses reflect small points of light. No movement triggers them. The system continues without interruption. The fencing along the shoulder remains straight. No section bends. No shadow shifts. Everything feels measured and exact. A faint hum lingers near the lamps. Not louder, not softer. It blends into the open highway, then disappears from notice. The booth does not anticipate a vehicle. It does not prepare to open. It simply remains lit, neutral, reliable. White dashed lines repeat into darkness, one after another, then another. The repetition feels steady, loosens further. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The night feels evenly spread across the road. The barrier arms remain lowered. The booth remains quiet. The highway remains empty, each element holding its place. No truck appears at the horizon. No beam sweeps toward the gate. No horn breaks the silence. The boundary remains undisturbed. Reflective road studs catch the light once more, then release it, then fade. Nothing travels across them. The checkpoint does not anticipate morning. It does not prepare to close. It simply stands between two stretches of road, steady, contained. The asphalt remains smooth and unmarked. The fencing remains aligned. The lamps remain constant. Everything balanced within the glow. No signal announces a change. No engine approaches. Nothing resolves. The scene feels complete as it is. The checkpoint remains along the empty highway. The lanes remain divided by quiet lines. The night remains wide and calm. Everything stays aligned, orderly and undisturbed through the long, silent hours before dawn. The checkpoint continues to rest beneath the steady lamps. No barrier lifts from its place. No hinge turns. The alignment remains exact. The asphalt holds its smooth surface. Painted lines stay clear. No tire disturbs the dust. The roadway feels unused and complete. Inside the booth, the desk lamp remains on. Light pools across the counter. No paper shifts. The chair stays still beneath it. Time loosens again along the highway. Moments do not follow one another. They settle evenly across the lanes. No direction forms. Reflective studs catch the glow briefly, then dim, then disappear back into shadow. The pattern feels measured and calm. Fencing along the shoulder remains straight. Its shadow falls without movement. No section bends in the breeze. The boundary feels firm. A faint hum lingers near the overhead lights. Not louder, not softer. It blends into the open road, then fades from notice. The barrier arms remain lowered. Red stripes stay visible. No mechanism clicks into motion. They hold without tension. Beyond the checkpoint, darkness stretches outward. No headlights appear. No sound travels closer. Distance feels contained. Time spreads evenly once more. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The pause feels sufficient. Security cameras remain fixed above the lanes. Their lenses reflect a small point of light. No motion interrupts them. The system continues quietly. The booth does not anticipate a vehicle. It does not prepare to open. It simply remains lit, steady, neutral. White dashed lines repeat into the night, one after another. repetition feels calming. No truck approaches from the horizon. No beam sweeps across the barriers. No horn sounds in the distance. The highway remains empty. The lamps continue their steady glow. The fencing continues to frame the road. The asphalt continues to rest, each element holding its place. Time loses more of its shape. Moments flatten. Nothing presses forward. The stillness deepens gently. The checkpoint stands between two quiet stretches of road. The lanes remain divided. The night remains wide and calm. Everything stays aligned, undisturbed and contained, as the long, silent hours continue. The lamps continue their quiet glow above the lanes. No shadow lengthens. No brightness fades. The balance remains steady. The booth windows reflect only pale light. No movement passes behind the glass. The door stays closed. The space feels suspended between arrivals that do not come. The barrier arms remain lowered. Their hinges hold firm. No motor hums beneath them. They rest without strain. Time loosens further along the asphalt. Moments do not queue. They settle gently across painted lines. No direction presses forward. Reflective markers catch the light again, then dim, then disappear. The pattern stays measured, unchanged. Fencing along the edge remains straight. Its mesh holds the boundary. No wind bends it. The perimeter feels exact and secure. A faint draft moves once across the road. Not enough to stir debris. Not enough to cool the air. Then it fades. The dashed white lines repeat into darkness. One segment, then another, then nothing. Distance feels contained. Inside the booth, the desk lamp remains on. Light rests on the counter. Nothing shifts beneath it. The chair remains untouched. Time spreads evenly once more. Minutes lose their weight. Presence replaces progression. The pause feels sufficient. Security cameras remain fixed in place. Their lenses do not turn. No signal changes. The system continues quietly. The checkpoint does not anticipate a vehicle. It does not prepare to open. It simply stands, neutral, steady. No headlights appear at the horizon. No engine hum rises. No sound crosses the boundary. The highway remains silent. The lamps continue. The barriers continue. The asphalt continues. Each element holding its place. Time loses more of its shape. Moments flatten. Nothing urges the road toward change. The stillness deepens. The checkpoint remains between two empty stretches of highway. The lanes remain marked. The night remains wide and calm. Everything stays aligned, contained, and undisturbed, as the long dark hours carry on without interruption. The checkpoint remains steady beneath the final quiet quiet stretch of night. No barrier lifts, no hinge turns. The alignment across the lanes stays exact. The lamps continue their pale glow. Light rests evenly on asphalt. Nothing brightens, nothing fades. The balance feels complete. Inside the booth, the desk lamp remains on. Its circle of light does not shift. The chair stays empty beside it. No page turns, no voice carries. White dashed lines extend into darkness. Reflective studs catch light once more, then release it again. Distance feels contained, unchanged. Time no longer feels divided. Moments settle quietly across the road. They do not lead anywhere. The pause feels sufficient. A faint draft passes along the shoulder, not enough to move debris, not enough to cool the air. Then it disappears completely. The fencing remains straight. The cameras remain fixed. The booth remains closed, each element holding its place. No headlights appear at the horizon. No engine approaches the gate. No signal calls for movement. The boundary stays firm. The checkpoint does not anticipate dawn. It does not prepare to open. It simply remains between two silent stretches of highway. Steady, contained. The asphalt rests beneath the lamps. The barriers rest across the lanes. The night rests over everything. All remains aligned, undisturbed and calm, as the final quiet minutes continue without change. The server hall remains lit long after offices above have gone dark. Rows of cabinets stand in precise alignment. Status lights blink in measured intervals. Nothing here prepares to shut down. The air does not feel restless. It moves with quiet intention. The words can remain distant, like cooling fans turning somewhere overhead. Long corridors stretch between the racks. Metal doors stay closed. No panel swings open. The arrangement feels deliberate, unchanged. Green and blue indicators pulse softly. Not urgent, not random, just steady. Each blink replaces the clock. Time begins to loosen inside the hall. Minutes stop announcing themselves. The rhythm of the machines fills the space. Nothing presses forward. Raised flooring hides cables beneath. Their paths remain fixed. No tension pulls through them. The structure feels anchored and secure. Overhead, cooling units hum evenly. Air flows down narrow aisles. Temperature remains constant. The balance feels precise, maintained without effort. No technician walks between the racks. No badge scanner beeps. No screen flickers to life. The system continues without supervision. Light reflects along polished surfaces. Edges soften slightly, then settle again. Nothing sharpens. Time spreads wider between the rows. Moments sit side by side. No sequence forms. The pause feels sufficient. A small display near the end of the aisle shows steady numbers. They do not rise. They do not fall. The values remain unchanged. The cabinets stand tall and quiet. Doors remain sealed. No latch clicks. The hardware feels complete in stillness. Air circulates again through the vents. Not louder, not softer. It blends into the hum, then disappears from notice. No alert sounds across the hall. No signal changes color. No warning light appears. The boundary remains undisturbed. Time loosens further inside the cooled air. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The night feels insulated within steel and glass. The cables beneath the floor remain ordered. The racks remain aligned. The indicators remain blinking, each element holding its place. The cooling fans continue their steady rotation. No vibration shifts the floor. No temperature drifts. Everything remains balanced. No door opens at the far end of the hall. No shadow crosses the corridor. Nothing interrupts the pattern. The system stays intact. The data center does not anticipate dawn. It does not prepare to sleep. It simply remains active, neutral, reliable. Blinking lights continue in quiet sequence. One fades, another appears. Then darkness returns between them. The pattern feels measured and calm. Time loses more of its shape. Moments flatten across the rows. Nothing urges the machines toward change. The stillness deepens gently. The cabinets remain upright. The air remains cool. The fans remain steady, each component aligned without demand. No signal announces an ending. No shutdown begins. Nothing resolves. The hall feels complete as it is. The data center remains beneath silent cooling fans. The racks remain illuminated. The night remains wide and calm beyond the walls. Everything stays aligned, orderly and undisturbed through the long, quiet hours before morning. The hall continues to glow in steady rows. No cabinet shifts its weight. No door latch turns. The alignment remains exact. Indicators blink in quiet intervals. Green, blue, then dark again. The rhythm stays measured, unchanged. Cool air moves down the narrow aisle. It does not warm. It does not fade. The temperature holds its balance. Time loosens further between the racks. Moments do not advance. They settle quietly in the hum of the fans. No direction forms. Cables beneath the raised floor remain ordered. Their paths stay hidden. No tension runs through them. Everything feels anchored. A small monitor near the wall keeps its numbers steady. Digits do not climb, they do not drop. The values remain constant. Light reflects softly along metal doors. Edges blur slightly, then return to shape. Nothing sharpens. No alert sounds across the hall. No color changes on the panels. No message appears. The system continues uninterrupted. Time spreads evenly once more. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The pause feels sufficient. Cooling fans maintain their steady rotation. No vibration travels through the floor. No draft shifts the air. The balance remains precise. The far end of the corridor stays empty. No shadow crosses the tiles. No footstep echoes. The space feels insulated. Indicators blink again in sequence. One fades, another glows. The pattern continues without variation. No door opens into the hall. No badge reader lights up. Nothing signals activity. The boundary remains firm. The racks remain upright. The air remains cool. The fans remain constant. Each element holding its place. Time loses more of its shape. Moments flatten within the steady hum. Nothing presses the machines toward change. The stillness deepens quietly. The data center continues beneath the cooling units. Lights continue their soft pulse. The night continues beyond the walls. Everything stays aligned, contained, and undisturbed as the long, quiet hours carry on. The rows remain evenly spaced beneath the steady lights. No cabinet door shifts. No hinge makes a sound. The order holds without effort. Indicators continue their quiet pulse. Green, blue, then dark again. The rhythm feels familiar, unchallenged. Cool air moves down the aisle once more. It does not gather. It does not thin. The temperature stays constant. Time loosens again within the hum. Moments stop lining up. They rest evenly between the racks. No sequence forms. Cables beneath the floor remain hidden and aligned. No current surges. No tension travels. The structure feels grounded. Light rests on the polished surfaces. Edges soften briefly, then settle back into shape. Nothing flickers. A small status screen near the entrance remains steady. Digits hold their value. No alert interrupts them. The system continues quietly. Time spreads evenly across the hall. Minutes lose their weight. Presence replaces progression. The pause feels sufficient. Cooling fans rotate with constant speed. No vibration reaches the tiles. No shift alters the airflow. The balance remains precise. The far end of the corridor stays empty. No shadow appears. No footstep echoes. The space remains insulated. Indicators blink again in measured sequence. One fades, another glows. Then darkness returns between them. The pattern continues without change. No door opens. No badge reader responds. No sound carries across the racks. The boundary remains firm. Metal, air, and light continue together. No brightness alters. No temperature drifts. Everything holds its place. Time loses more of its shape. Moments flatten within the steady hum. Nothing urges the machines toward change. The stillness deepens gently. The server hall remains beneath the cooling fans. Lights continue their soft rhythm. The night remains wide beyond the walls. All stays aligned, contained, and undisturbed as the quiet hours continue without interruption. The hall remains steady through the final quiet stretch. No rack shifts its place. No indicator changes color. The alignment across the rows stays exact. Cooling fans continue their low rotation. Air moves evenly through the aisles. Nothing warms, nothing cools further. The balance feels complete. Lights rest along the cabinets. Their glow does not flicker. Shadows remain soft and unchanged. The rhythm feels sufficient. Time no longer feels divided. Moments settle quietly within the hum. They do not lead anywhere. The pause feels enough on its own. A faint current passes beneath the raised floor. Not louder, not faster. Then it blends back into stillness. The status screens remain steady. Digits hold their value. No alert interrupts the flow. The system continues without supervision. No door opens at the end of the corridor. No badge reader lights up. No footsteps echo across the tiles. The boundary stays firm. The racks remain upright. The air remains cool. The fans remain constant, each element holding its role. The data center does not anticipate morning. It does not prepare to rest. It simply continues, neutral, reliable. Lights blink once more in quiet sequence. Then again, then darkness between. Everything remains aligned, contained, and undisturbed as the final silent minutes pass within the steady hum of machines. The harbor crane remains extended above the silent stacks. Container rows stand in perfect alignment. Work lights glow across the concrete yard. Nothing here prepares to lift. The air does not feel restless. It moves slowly between steel edges. The words can stay distant, like cables hanging without tension. The crane arm stretches high above the ground. Its trolley rests at the center. No motor turns. No chain descends. The structure feels suspended, balanced against the night sky. Below, containers sit in long parallel lines. Their painted numbers remain clear. No door latch clicks, no lock shifts. The stacks feel complete in stillness. Floodlights cast pale rectangles across the yard. Edges remain sharp. Shadows fall straight and unmoving. Nothing flickers. Nothing brightens. Time begins to loosen between the rows. Minutes stop marking progress. The glow replaces the clock. Nothing presses forward. A narrow service lane runs between stacks. White lines reflect faint light. No tire crosses them. The surface feels unused, settled into silence. The crane cabin remains dark above. Windows reflect only sky. No operator moves inside. The height feels distant, but contained. A faint breeze passes through the yard. Not enough to stir debris, not enough to rattle steel. Then it fades without trace. Time spreads wider across the containers. Moments rest side by side. No sequence forms. The pause feels sufficient. Metal corners catch the light briefly, then release it, then fade back into shadow. The pattern feels measured, predictable. The crane hook hangs motionless. Its chain remains straight. No weight pulls downward. The balance feels exact. Beyond the yard, the water remains calm. No wake touches the dock. No horn travels across the harbor. Distance feels insulated. The stacks do not shift. The crane does not lower. The lane does not fill. Each element holding its place. Time loosens further still. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The night feels evenly spread across steel. Floodlights continue their steady glow. They do not dim. They do not flare. Their presence feels neutral and steady. No gate opens at the yard entrance. No truck approaches from the road. No signal changes color. The boundary remains firm. Painted logos repeat across the stacks, one above another, then another. The repetition feels calming, unchallenged. A distant buoy light blinks beyond the cranes, soft, measured. The yard does not respond. Time spreads again between the rows. Moments flatten within the light. Nothing urges the space toward change. The stillness deepens gently. The crane arm remains extended. The containers remain aligned. The concrete remains dry and firm. Each component balanced without effort. No latch releases. No wheel turns. No engine hum begins. The harbor yard remains paused. The air cools slightly near the water's edge. Not enough to gather, not enough to carry sound. Then it settles again. The crane does not anticipate motion. It does not prepare to lift. It simply remains suspended above the stacks, steady, contained. The yard does not anticipate morning. It does not prepare to wake. It holds its arrangement without demand. neutral, reliable. Light continues, steel continues, air continues, each element maintaining its place. No signal announces change. No chain lowers from the arm. Nothing resolves. The scene feels complete as it is. The harbor crane remains over still containers. The yard remains illuminated and empty. The night remains wide and calm. Everything stays aligned, orderly and undisturbed, through the long, quiet hours before dawn. The crane remains extended above the quiet stacks. Its arm does not shift against the sky. Its camels do not sway. The height keeps its measured balance. Nothing here prepares to lift. Below, the containers continue in long, deliberate rows. Steel edges catch the pale glow. Painted codes remain visible in straight lines. No latch releases. No door opens. The stacks feel complete in their stillness. Floodlights hold their steady brightness. Light spreads across concrete without interruption. Shadows remain fixed at the base of each column. Nothing flickers, nothing dims. Time loosens again across the yard. Minutes do not line up. They settle evenly between lanes. The glow replaces the clock. A narrow service path runs beside the stacks. White markings reflect faintly. No tire mark appears. The surface feels undisturbed, almost untouched. The crane cabin remains dark above. Glass reflects only distant harbor lights. No figure moves behind it. The height feels distant, but grounded. Metal corners along the containers catch light briefly, then release it, then settle back into shadow. The pattern feels slow and predictable. Beyond the yard, water remains calm. No wake touches the dock. No rope tightens along the pier. The harbor feels sealed from motion. Time spreads wider between the stacks. Moments rest side by side. No sequence presses forward. The pause feels sufficient. The crane hook hangs perfectly still. Its chain remains vertical. No weight draws it downward. The balance feels exact. Air moves once across the yard. Not enough to stir dust. Not enough to carry sound. Then it settles completely. Floodlights continue their steady glow. Steel continues to hold its shape. Concrete continues to rest beneath them, each element aligned without effort. No truck approaches the gate. No headlight crosses the boundary. No signal changes color. The yard remains unclaimed by movement. Time loosens further still. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The night deepens gently across steel and concrete. Painted logos repeat across container walls, one above another, then another. The repetition feels calming, unchanged. The crane arm remains extended against the sky. It does not anticipate motion. It does not prepare to lower. It simply remains suspended, steady, and contained. The water beyond the dock stays dark. The stacks remain aligned. The service lane remains empty. Nothing alters its position. No latch clicks. No engine hum begins. No chain tightens against steel. The harbor yard holds its arrangement without demand. Light continues. Air continues. Steel continues. Each component maintaining its role, balanced and quiet. The crane remains over the still containers. The yard remains illuminated and empty. The night remains wide and calm. Everything stays aligned, orderly and undisturbed, through the long, silent stretch before dawn. The crane continues to hold its quiet reach across the yard. Its arm remains fixed against the sky. Cables hang without sway. No pulley turns. The height feels suspended, balanced without effort. Below, the container stacks remain aligned in steady rows. Steel corners catch the glow once more, then soften again. No latch clicks. No door shifts in its frame. Floodlights continue their measured brightness. Light rests evenly across the concrete. Shadows remain where they settled. Nothing sharpens, nothing fades. Time loosens further between the lanes. Moments do not follow one another. They rest quietly beneath the crane. No direction forms. The narrow service path remains empty. White lines reflect faintly. No mark disturbs their length. The surface feels complete. Beyond the stacks, the water stays dark and flat. No wake touches the dock. No horn travels across the harbor. Distance feels contained and calm. The crane hook hangs exactly where it was, chain vertical, metal unmoving. No weight pulls downward. Air moves once through the yard, not enough to lift dust, not enough to stir debris. Then it settles again. Time spreads evenly across the steel. Minutes lose their edges. Presence replaces progression. The pause feels sufficient. Painted logos repeat across container walls, one beside another, then another. The repetition feels steady, unchanged. No gate opens at the yard entrance. No truck appears at the boundary. No beam sweeps across the stacks. The perimeter remains firm. Light continues to glow. Steel continues to hold. Concrete continues to rest. Each element maintaining its place. The crane does not anticipate motion. The stacks do not anticipate removal. The harbor does not anticipate arrival. Everything remains suspended in quiet balance. Time loosens once more. Moments flatten across the yard. Nothing presses forward. The stillness deepens gently. The arm remains extended. The hook remains motionless. The lanes remain clear. No shift suggests change. The harbor crane continues above still containers. The yard remains illuminated and empty. The night remains wide and calm. Everything stays aligned, contained and undisturbed as the long silent hours carry on.